not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now it's time for the newspaper review. Let's take a look at the front pages of the national dailies, and we will of course begin with Daily Trust newspaper. From the top of the page there, we have a story that says Seaport terminal operators jack up cargo handling charges by 45%. And we find details of that story on page 21. We have outrage over Quran desecration in Sweden. We also have Naira now undervalued after float, Bank of America says. And the big story here talks about parents, students cry out as varsities hike fees. And we have writers that says cost of living unbearable, withdrawal last option. Those students protest over 300% increment. Increase inevitable, says authorities. Now it seems a lot of things are being hiked, in Nigeria these days. But with the student loans, I really hope it's going to cushion the effects of this hike of, schools, varsities. Yeah. Now we have a pictorial here, pictorials of Eid al-Kabir celebration and children having fun at Millennium Park in Abuja.
I'll do anything to switch places with them. Just for a moment.
I can imagine. The federal government okays vehicle importation via land borders. The details on page 22. And on the footnotes there, we have Buhari never asked Tinubu not to probe his appointees, says Garba Shehu. Bloomberg rates Dangote richest man in Africa with $15.6 billion. And hope for new tuberculosis vaccine in 100 years as welcome Gates Foundation fund trial. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
Well, let's turn our attention now to the front page of the Guardian newspaper for today. And here are some of the stories you can find on the paper. From the very top, soft drinks, chewing gums, toothpaste pose cancer risk, according to the World Health Organization. Now, this has definitely got my interest.
I'm telling you.
Soft drink, chewing gums, toothpaste.
These are guilty pleasures of a lot of people.
I mean, but toothpaste, this is, for your own dental health.
Wow.
But then again, maybe get to the details on page 7 so you can find out this perspective from the World Health Organization. But I don't know. Very disturbing as far as, our regular habits are concerned. Issued NINs hit 101 million. And that's 56.7% allocated to males. Why is that? The business page of the Guardian newspaper has all the details for you. How about this one? Towards first 100 days. In 30 days of honeymoon, Tinubu's sweeping reforms leave Nigerians poorer, agitated. That's the big story on the Guardian newspaper. It continues on page 4 and 5. And there is an infographic there about some of the high points or highlights of the first 30 days. And I must say it is one of the most active 30 days I've ever seen in the beginning of any administration. The removal of subsidy, the sacking of service chiefs, the investigations to MFLA on Bawa, the floating of the Naira. It's just a lot of action in 30 days. But there's also a very big question. But it says, where are the palliatives? Get to the details on pages 4 and 5. Catholic bishops reject bill for council on Christian education. Why is that? Page 3 will tell you a lot more about it. On page 6, you can find this story. I invoked Emilokon's spirit to win despite cashless policy, says Tinubu. Okay. I suppose this has to do with the visit in Ijebu, I think. When he visited Ogun. I think that was the first time he made that statement, also during the campaign season when he visited Ogun State.
Just showed the report.
Yeah, exactly. Abuja residents lament growing rate of almajiris, and this story continues on the Metro page of the Guardian newspaper. It is an endemic situation, especially in this part of the country. Environmentalist decries fresh oil spillage in River State. And finally, on the footnote, Obi tackles Tinubu over long convoy asks him to lead by example. Did you see that video on social media? I think it was, I stopped counting at 20-something SUVs.
So what was actually the need for all that convoy?
I don't know, but then again, you have people following the convoy of the president because they are seeking for
his entourage.
Yeah, exactly.
But does he need so much?
I don't think so. I think he needs one car. I mean, he's just
Exactly.
maybe the security, 3 others. I mean, he's the president, but
just 4 or 5 should do.
Probably a bit too much.
All right. All right, so let's take a look at the Nation newspaper, and we'll start with the lead story here that says, Tinubu to governors, be ready, let's fix economy together. And we have riders that says, Shatima, Akpabio, Abbas, governors celebrate Eid with president in Lagos. Now, at the top of the page there, deluge of visitors forced Buhari to leave Daura, says aide. I remember when he left, and he was like, he hopes Daura will not be too far for a lot of people to visit. And there we have it. So many people visiting him, even, after his tenure. Now we have Eid ground clash. Adeleke's account illogical. Senator, governor disagree. I also have Bloomberg rates Aliko Dangote Africa's richest. 11 die as truck rams into bus on Benin-Lagos road. Just below the nameplates there, we have APC non-serving senators reaffirm backing for president. And below the pictorial there, we have Ambode reunites with Tinubu, Sanwo-Olu, Fashola, and there's actually an analysis on that. These are some of the stories on the Nation newspaper.
Turning our attention now to the blueprint for today, the front page of the Blueprint newspaper, CBN directive on bank customers' social media handle illegal. I was about to say that too, but this is according to the NDPC. Want to read more about that KYC policy, knowing your customer? Take a look at page 25. I mean, I can always give them the wrong handle. Don't you think? I mean, you can always give them...
For one person who actually has like 5, 10 different handles.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially business handles.
Sure, definitely. Anyway, page 25 has more on that story for you. Explosives kill Zamfara bandits kingpin Dogo Gudali. Good news. Page 6 has all the details for you. The big story on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper says, Tinubu to Nigerians, let's go through baby steps in faith. Do you know what this reminds me of? The Baba Guslo comment made by Buhari the other time. Now he's taking baby steps. But it doesn't look like baby steps to me. It looks like he's taking very big steps so far.
I think it actually comes to a point where he has to, just hang on and watch if whatever policy he actually comes up with
exactly
works.
Sure. It's still early days anyway. Here are some of the riders. Says, cashless policy or not, my victory at 2023 poll was sure. Okay. Bit cocky, but okay. I know what it means to be a refugee, he says. And the Awujale says, God spoke through your Emilokon. So you talk about power of manifestation. Perhaps that's what's at play here. And this is the quad. We have former Governor Akiumi Ambode. You have current Governor Sanwo-Olu. Both on the trial of... You also have Governor Fashola, former Governor Fashola, both just flanking, or all of them flanking the president there. And this was at the government house in Marina in Lagos, part of the Eid celebration, I believe. And 11 killed, 8 injured in Benin-Lagos Expressway crash. Ogala reshuffles top officers in Nigerian Navy shake-up. Subsidy removal, best federal government policy ever, says PDP. Is it? I think it has to do with the PDP chair in Edo State making that comment. Page 13 has the latest for you on that. And finally, hold steps to hike prices of commodities, services, Afenifere tells federal government.
All right, so let's take a look at more stories. We'll take a look at Nigerian News Direct up next. And we have Aliko Dangote. We also know he emerged Africa's richest man for 12th year running, according to Bloomberg.
Did it disturb you when the South African took over?
That's according to Forbes.
A little bit, yeah.
So what happened? Did he get back his place, or is he still seen?
I mean, Forbes is bigger.
Of course, it was very disturbing.
Yeah. I don't like Nigerians to lose to anybody.
Exactly.
Even if it's not my money, but you know.
All right, so ICPC challenges World Bank TI to hold countries receiving corruption proceeds accountable. And we also have NAFDAC issues alert on contaminated Sprite bottles. I actually saw that, I think, yesterday, and it's really alarming considering it's one of a lot of people's best drink. And
I always prefer the bottle instead of the plastic bottle.
Okay, but now it's saying it's the bottles that actually have,
Really?
the issue. Yes, exactly.
Wow, okay.
And, considering that this is actually happening when celebrations are ongoing, a lot of people need to be very, very careful.
And Sprite is very popular also.
Very, yeah. All right, so the lead story here talks about my victory was guaranteed despite Naira redesign policy, says Tinubu. In fact, boasts. Says he invoked spirit of freedom in Ogun, and as governor, Abiodun pledges support for Ogun State. Now, cost of governance, federal government to discontinue funding of professional bodies and councils. Regulation to obtain bank customers' social media handles illegal, says Data Protection Commission. Now, we already have the BVN and we have NIN in some cases. So why do you need
the bank has more than
media?
enough information about their customers. Yeah.
So what would getting their social media handles
And
do?
there are so many people that are not on social media. So what do you do about that?
Exactly, especially those in rural areas.
Exactly.
All right, so don't share subsidy money to state governors, Sheikh Hussaini urges Tinubu. And we also have on London meeting, Buhari did not ask Tinubu to stop probe of his cabinets, says Garba Shehu. These are some of the stories on Nigerian News Direct.
I would have loved to hear what he actually asked the president to do, which I'm sure
I think he's
Mr.
actually
Garba
been speaking a lot more now that he's no longer in office than when he was.
Exactly. All right, up next, the This Day newspaper for today. President says a unified forex to save Nigeria from financial crisis. Advocates teamwork for robust economic turnaround, seek governors' cooperation. With $15.6 billion wealth, Bloomberg rates Aliko Dangote richest man in Africa. More on his story on page 5. Below the nameplate, Afenifere urges Tinubu to arrest spate of price increase. Also on page 6. According to, is it the Wall Street Journal? Aftermath of failed mutiny, Putin moves to seize control of Wagner's global empire, sends emissaries to Africa, vows group's operations won't be disrupted. If you want to do some further reading on the standoff that happened a couple of days ago in Russia between the Russian army and the Wagner group, you can continue that story on page 27.
It was actually scary for a lot of people, especially Nigerians actually live in Russia. So
especially when they were making their way to the capital in Moscow, but
But there are lots of theories about what happened.
Sure, and there will always be theories about it. I mean, Belarus, why did they step in? What happens to, Prigozhin, the head of Wagner Group? But I suppose Putin can, catch a sigh of relief for things were not looking good for him when that was unfolding. Well, Tinubu says, despite ineffective cashless policy, I knew we would win presidential poll. Recalls Emilokon declaration started in Ogun. Says he invoked spirit of freedom, determination twice to overcome poll obstacles, and pledges to fulfill all promises. Urges Nigerians not to be in a hurry or be child's president over convoy formation. And here's a pictorial there of Tinubu's visit to Awujale, and he's been flanked, or rather they both are flanking Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona alongside the chairman of Globacom, Mr. Mike Adenuga. And finally, major shakeup as the Navy reshuffles, redeploys 56 rear admirals. More on this story on page 26.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to Nigerian Tribune. From the top there, federal government's debt servicing gulped 1.2 trillion naira in first quarter 2023, says a DMO. We also have First Bank introduces first humanoid robots to engage customers. I wonder how that will work out. Oh my goodness.
Are you a First Bank customer?
Yes, I am, actually.
Okay. Tell me about it when you do have that experience.
I will. All right, so moving on, the lead story talks about the Naira redesign, and Tinubu saying, despite its failure, our money was confiscated, says Tinubu. And he says, I could have benefited from dual exchange rates if retained, he adds, and promises to fast-track Nigeria's economic growth. And you can find details of that story on page 3 and 23. Now, federal government to stop funding professional bodies, councils. You can find more on that on page 4. And minority leader says opposition against Tambuwal thickens. Wike may drop a Jaribe for a northern lawmaker. And we also have major shake-up in Navy as Ogala redeploys 57 rear admirals, commodores. 11 travelers die in Benin-Lagos highway accident. A sad one there. And Catholic bishops reject National Council for Christian Education bill, says it violates 1999 Constitution. And these are some of the stories on Nigerian Tribune.
The Daily Sun is up next, so let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Sun. Just under that 20th anniversary logo, there's this story about no business partnership with Britain until Kanu is freed. Well, this is not the Britain High Commission saying it. It is the Independent or Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, that is credited with making this statement. Why do you think they can come in between that kind of deal? Well, read their thoughts on page 27. Nothing would have stopped my victory, says Tinubu. Declares hope for Nigeria, for better Nigeria, won't fail, vows to deliver on all campaign promises. Pledges to fix Nigeria's bleeding economy. And once again, you have the picture of the president and his proteges, right? I think it's fair to call them that.
Yeah, definitely.
From Fashola to Ambode to the current governor of Lagos State, Mr. Sanwo-Olu. And this was part of the celebration of the Eid, the reception for the president. Guba polls, PDP confident in winning Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa. NIA retires, or I beg your pardon, NIA retirees accuse ex-director Dauda of treason. Senate Minority Leader, opposition against Tambuwal's bid grows. More on this story on page 26. Navy reshuffles 56 rear admirals in major shakeup. And you just reported, I think, 57? The inconsistency is obviously always going to be an issue. Appoints new FOC, NDC commandant and others. And Catholic bishops reject proposed bill on Christian Education Council. Sacrifices for better Nigeria must start from leaders, according to Obi. And 12 pastors, driver, baby killed in a Edo road crash. Very unfortunate and sad development there. And finally, NAFDAC warns about contaminated soft drink. More on page 5.
All right, so let's move on to Daily Independent next. We have Obi slams Tinubu over 124 vehicles on his Lagos convoy. Maintains you can't ask Nigerians to sacrifice when you don't. And a lot of I seem to remember a few days ago where there was the whole thing about the 114 increment of salaries.
There's also the 24 billion now for accommodation for the 10th National Assembly. There's a variety of things. I mean, you see the convoy,
exactly.
It's just, they don't appear to be making sacrifices at the top. So.
Yeah, so a lot of Nigerians are asking, why are we the ones, suffering
forced,
for this?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now we have more stories, and the lead story here talks about supply glitches and stalling CBN exchange rate unification policy. All right, we also have more stories here. Minority parties, senators vow to resist Atiku's move to impose Tambuwal as minority leader. Details on page 29. On Sokoto killing, Khan urges religious leaders, followers to promote peaceful coexistence. We have condemns barbaric killing of butcher Usman Buddha, and No, that was really a sad one there. I saw the video and it was really disheartening. Actually, I came across it. I stumbled across it, and no.
People who post things like that on my timeline, I just find a way to block them because I think it's too sensitive.
I had no idea what was happening in the beginning until actually saw it, and I was like, what happened? Then I read it later on, and I was like, it was really
very
disheartening.
disturbing, too graphic.
All right, so aspartame sweeteners in Diet Coke, chewing gum may cause cancer, says WHO. And Buhari, in fact, there are lots of, in that particular, according to that particular report, there are actually a lot of things that we're actually ingesting these days that may actually have, cancer risks and all that. So but how do we actually stop that from happening?
Just go organic, eat more fruits, eat more vegetables, and
but even the fruits itself. You have some fruits being ripened with carbide, a lot, some being colored, some being sweetened, injected with sweeteners and everything. So how do you even know which is organic and which isn't?
The bottom line is, no matter how healthy you eat, we're all gonna die someday. But it's more about how long and productive of a life you live.
All right, so let's move on. Buhari vowed never to interfere in Tinubu's government, says Garba Shehu. We stopped receiving funding from government since 1990, says ICANN, and supports stoppage of budgetary allocation to professional bodies.
1990?
That's...
Guess who was in charge in 1990? That's Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida.
Yeah.
So this isn't even a big news for them as far as ICANN is concerned, because they have not received anything for the past 30 years.
All right, so roll back past government's actions. Aviation industry players tell Tinubu, and they task federal government and foreign airlines trapped funds and overall of industry. Now, that particular industry definitely needs an overhaul because a lot is happening that we still do not understand, especially when you intend on traveling.
The fares are just exorbitant,
and then the timing, the schedule, you're not even sure of.
I think that industry just needs a lot of repositioning and reform, obviously.
And it actually used to be one of the best industries.
Yeah, because there's always good return for investment, but unfortunately,
they kept time. Everything was working. I seriously don't understand what happened.
And the exchange rate isn't helping also.
It's not at all. All right, so major shake-up as Navy reshuffles 56. We have 56 here as well.
So there's a bit of consistency there. Yeah.
Yes, and one Commodore. And these are some of the stories on Daily Independent.
I think finally we take a look at the business day for today. The front page of the Business Day newspaper. Tinubu's next big move is fighting crude theft, according to the Bank of America. And Naira fair value seen at 680 Naira per dollar. And the big story is talking about baby making racket exploits Nigerian women, or making racket exploits Nigerian women. I saw some pictures, I think images, just a couple of days ago. I think it's from the southeastern part of the country where you have teenagers, girls as young as 15 and 16. They were being exploited in this baby making factories. And unfortunately,
you have a lot of them there actually.
Yeah, so quite unfortunate. There's a lot more you can read on that particular story. It continues on page 30. Demand for dollar-priced properties seen returning on new foreign exchange policy. What is that all about? Get to the details on page 31. Analysis: Nollywood soars as 5 Nigerians join Oscar Academy. Good for them. Really good, or for us rather. Dangote retains Africa's richest man title with $15.6 billion US, according to Bloomberg. US closes easy admission path for Nigerians, others into elite universities. Why is that happening? Take a look at the story on page 31. And you still have that picture there of President Tinubu and his political allies in Lagos, former governors of Lagos, marking this year's Eid al-Kabir celebration at the government house in Marina.
All right, and with that, we're actually done reading out headlines on the national dailies this morning. And sadly, our usual newspaper analyst could not join us this morning. We sincerely hope that he's fine wherever he is, and hopefully next week Friday he would be with us. And we hope he hasn't taken too much of the Salah celebrations that he could not make it today.
Him at home. Probably that's what's keeping him at home. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to more stories, especially on Daily Trust newspaper. Now, there's this particular interesting story on page 25, and it talks about the recovery of Plateau government property. Task force receives 50 petitions, and it seems a lot is actually happening in states where you actually have a new government. We've seen the demolitions and the recoveries in Kano State and other states as well. But the question is, are they overdoing it?
I think it's a zero-sum game in the sense that when it comes to politics, it's always about my victory has to confirm your loss. And unfortunately, there's always this vindictive approach that some politicians always have. And it's a bit personal, especially you look at the Kano situation. It's just, you can tell, because even during the campaigns, there were threats, there were certain comments that were made. And at the end of the day, it doesn't allow for a smooth governing process. And you don't need that distraction, especially if you're the new guy in charge. But then again, it doesn't excuse some of the behaviors of past administrations, immediate past administrations, who do certain recruitment exercise at the twilight of their regime. Look at what happened in Kaduna, for instance. Even though you would expect the outgoing governor to give Senator Obasani some sort of easy takeoff,
it wasn't that way.
Bringing them back on board and then allowing the governor to take charge of that headache. But then again,
lots of petitions flying around, and the famous or the viral statement of someone wanting to slap somebody when they see them. So it's quite funny.
Obviously, it's Nigerian politics for you at its peak.
All right, so on page 26, there's a story here of the new tuberculosis vaccines in 100 years, advances as Wellcome and Gates Foundation Fund trial. I seem to remember when Bill Gates actually talked about, investing in Nigeria a few days ago and all that. And we're actually seeing that happen.
The investment always spans education, healthcare. These are the two areas of interest for the Gates Foundation. And it's good news, especially because TB is one of those endemic diseases that Nigeria has to deal with. And I think our global burden is quite significant if you look at the total tally on an annual basis. So it will be a welcome development. We actually have a very good treatment for it.
But the hype, that COVID-19 hype actually came, and it just doused the fire that came with tuberculosis and also HIV. So not so many people actually talking about it.
You know this Hausa adage where they say "Saungiwa takanera kumi." COVID-19 pretty much overshadowed everything when it was happening. So that's just it.
All right, so let's take a look at the city and crime page. There's so many stories on this page. That's pages 10 and 23. We have Kebbi Hisba arrests mother of 3 for killing day-old baby. Now, how is it possible that you carry a child for 9 months and end up killing that child on first day? Now, I know postpartum depression is actually real.
This is just a sick person, Dasha. We shouldn't even try to explain because there's no way you can explain this type of behavior. And I also was reading the story from Kaduna yesterday when the police made that statement about arresting 503 persons. A brother kidnapping his brother, collecting 120,000 ransom, and then killing his brother.
Like, what's the point?
Some people are just,
it's really
that
sad.
criminal-minded, unfortunately.
All right, so more stories here. We have 2 killed, 2 injured in Lagos home fire. Sad one there. 2-story building collapses in Port Harcourt. I thought the era of, building collapses is actually over, because I remember when it was so rampant, especially in Lagos State. And a lot has actually been done to stop that from happening.
It's all about standardization, and regular checks. How about this story? I think it's on page 28. It's something that's been trending also, the Osun Eid clash. Did you read about that?
Yeah,
Governor Adeleke and Senator Basiru.
I did.
And then the government is trying to sell us on the idea that there was an attempt on the governor's life. I don't think so. I think the governor created that scene. It was too dramatic.
Was it the governor or his people? His people probably did, but you talked about politics and how
What would you do if you were in his shoes? Would you not call your people to order?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter where I sit.
Exactly.
It's just a 2 rakat prayer.
Exactly. Let's just do this. And considering the fact that we're here to pray.
Exactly. It wasn't
So
a
you need to
political
be
gathering.
selfless.
It wasn't an official government
But them
function.
insisting that was supposed to be the governor's, seat where the Bashir guy was sitting and everything.
But there are no seats.
It was too petty, if
But
you
there
ask
were
me.
no seats,
Exactly.
Dashe. It was just a prayer mat and...
It's a space.
Yeah.
But it was too petty, if you ask me.
Yeah, seriously.
All right. So there's this story about 2 thieves burned to death in Nasarawa State, talking about jungle justice here. We have kidnappers arrested in Kogi and 7 in Benue. Police rescue 3 from cultists and robbers. I saw a video trending where police actually rescued some people from kidnappers.
Yeah.
I think it was in the east, and it was really, really scary.
Yeah.
It was
I think there was this case. I don't know whether it's the Imo case you're talking about or the Anambra case, but yeah. I think they got wind of one of the gang members, and then he took them to their hideout, and then there was a gun duel, and somehow the guy lost his life. But they obviously recovered some ammunition and things like that. So kudos to the police. They were not giving them as much credit as they should be getting, even though sometimes they give you reason not to praise them or commend them. But good job
They did
there.
really well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we're done with the newspaper review.